moral behavior produces the greatest good for the greatest number. So it's considered something that is of benefit for the entire organization, for the greatest number of the staff. The decision maker, the leader, is expected to consider the result, the effectiveness of each decision alternative on all parties and select the one that optimizes the satisfaction for the greatest number of people. This kind of an approach, the utilitarian ethics, is cited as a basis for the recent trend among companies to police or to control the personal habits of the employees, such as alcohol and tobacco consumption on the job, and in some cases after hours, because such behavior affects the entire workplace. Similarly, many companies argue that monitoring how employees spend their time on the internet, as I said before, is necessary to maintain the company reputation and workplace productivity. Do you agree with the last statement that this could be of benefit for the organization? Could problems occur if individuals are free to do whatever they want on social networks? What's your opinion about it? Can you hear me? Yes. Depends on the context. Vesna, you mean that this depends on the context in which they work and in the particular situation that they face, right? Okay, but I guess that you would all agree that it's needed to do it on some kind of a reasonable level, that they shouldn't overuse this kind of a mechanism to control what the individuals, the staff, do in their free time, especially. The individualism approach to ethics. It contends that acts are moral when they promote the individual's best long-term interests. So we are much more focused on the individual and his or her needs, requirements, values, results, motivation, rather than to come to a situation when we consider this as something of benefit for the greatest number of people. Individualism is believed to lead to honesty and integrity because that works best in the long run. We have motivated individuals who want to take part in the, who feel very good in the organization in which they work. A sub-question: how we face utilitarianism versus individualism? Well, we all saw the difference, that these are different approaches, but at the end we would realize that a combination of the different approaches could help us to guide our decision-making process regarding ethics. So sometimes we come across in situations when we realize that it's very important to make a decision that it's of benefit for the entire organization, for the entire team, and in relation to what we do with the stakeholders. But sometimes it's quite important to have into consideration that it's very important to stimulate individuals, particularly those whose voices haven't been heard for a while, who've been excluded from some strategic processes in the organization, that in situations or contexts when the strategic management process is concentrated in the hands of several people. So it's very important. That's why I said at the very beginning that it's very important to make this check and balance process and control our practices from time to time. And this could be done if we have a strategic document, if we have a system in place that enables us to control our different practices and different approaches. Moral rights approach to ethics. It asserts that human beings have fundamental rights and liberties that cannot be taken away by an individual's decision. Thus, an ethically correct decision is the one that best maintains the rights of those people who are affected by it. And in this case, if the leaders and the management of the organization is aware about the definitions of these fundamental rights of the others, if they know these things well, then they can easily guide and avoid interfering with the fundamental rights of others. And we have some illustrations here. A decision to eavesdrop, to wiretap employees violates the rights to privacy. Sexual harassment is unethical because it violates the right to freedom of conscience. And the last example, the right of free speech would support whistleblowers who call attention to illegal or inappropriate actions within the organizations, because those people who want to protect their identity can help us to identify the problems that happen in the organization, particularly when it comes to very unprofessional and unethical conducts and behaviors in the organization. Six moral, you can see them on the slide, the 6 moral rights that should be considered during the decision-making process. This is the moral rights, still the moral rights approach. The right to free consent, the right to privacy, the right of freedom of conscience, the right of free speech, the right to due process, and the right to life and safety. Justice approach to ethics. It holds that moral decisions must be based on standards of equity, fairness, and impartiality. And we have a description of 3 types of justice of concern to managers here: distributive justice, procedural justice, and compensatory justice. The first one requires that different people different treatment of people should not be based on arbitrary characteristics. Individuals who are similar in respects relevant to a decision should be treated similarly. Therefore, men and women should not receive different salaries if they are performing the same job, if they have the same position. But sometimes it's an issue of a proper assessment and evaluation to see if there's some difference which is of substantial importance to make a decision on how to maybe promote some individuals just because they happen to have some qualities, some knowledge that is very important for the position that they're expected to hold. Procedural justice requires that rules be administered fairly. They should be clearly stated and be consistently and impartially enforced. Compensatory justice argues that individuals should be compensated for the cost of their injuries by the responsible party. And individuals should not be perceived as responsible for matters over which they have no control. We have 2 factors affecting the ethical choices, out of which the first one is the management, and the second one is the organization itself. The first one, we know that managers bring specific personality and traits to the job. They have their needs, they have influences from different environments, different contexts in which they operate and live. They have, for instance, these different religious backgrounds. All of these factors and some others, the list is not exclusive, shape the manager's value system. Specific features, personality characteristics such as ego strength, self-confidence, and a strong sense of independence may enable managers to make ethical decisions. One important personal feature is the stage of moral development. On the next slide, you can see the 3 levels of personal moral development. Level 1, pre-conventional. Level 2, conventional. And level 3, post-conventional level of personal moral development. And we have an explanation on the following slide. At the pre-conventional level, individuals are concerned with the awards, recognitions, and or punishments, and obey authority to avoid some personal consequences. And it's very clear that this level is usually associated with organizational contexts who use an autocratic leadership style. At the level 2, called the conventional level, people learn to conform to the expectations of good behavior as defined by colleagues, families, friends, and society. Meeting social and interpersonal duties is considered as very important. And as a result of this, we have a process of group collaboration, exchange of knowledge between colleagues to accomplish the desired organizational goals. And the difference here with the first level is that the manager uses a style of leading that motivates the interpersonal relationships and cooperation. At the post-conventional level, individuals are guided by an internal set of values and standards and may disobey rules or laws that violate these principles. This is a situation when we think our moral judgment leads us to situations to decide that we should obey, we should avoid some kind of restrictions or some rules that are already set just because we think that we should help the others, or we should support some processes that are important to the organization. This could be an efficient for the organization as such if the leaders give the opportunities, provide the opportunities for constructive participation in governance of the organization. The second factor which influences, which affects the process of ethical decision making is the organization. Not everything depends on the personal, or on the manager or the leader of the organization. It's very clear that the ethical decisions also depend on the context of our interactions with the other people and the networks and the links that are built within the organization. They guide the people's actions. Sometimes these processes of guidance are easier when we have a culture set up in the organization, when some employees or some, I would say, more powerful employees can take the role of leaders or role models who guide processes and other employees just follow them. And this can, of course, happen in the organization. The three pillars of an ethical organization. Ethical individuals who act with integrity, behave honestly, inspire trust, treat people right, play fair, have high level of moral development. The ethical leadership. It's very important to have, as mentioned before, these role models who can help in the process of guidance in the ethical decision-making processes. To uphold ethical values in the organization, to communicate about ethics and values, reward ethical behavior, and swiftly discipline unethical behavior. Structures and systems, they could be different, depend on from organization to organizations. Some of you mentioned the ethical codes, codes of conduct in the organization. Sometimes it's very important that we plan and organize trainings and workshops where these issues could be discussed. particularly when we have a list of problems that repeatedly occur in the organization and for which we need the experience and the sharing of knowledge with the other colleagues to come up to some joint conclusions. And this, the mechanisms of whistleblowers, which were mentioned before, which can help in the identification of the most problematic practices in the organization. This slide refers to the ethics and the globalization. Just briefly about it, that the impact of globalization is very important in the context of the ethical conduct in the organization. And we are certainly faced with situations when it's difficult to decide what is ethical and what is not, particularly when it comes to situations when we work in some foreign contexts. When managers work in some other countries, they need sensitivity and an openness to other systems, as well as commitment to resolve difficult issues. And to be able to do it, we should be aware about those systems, what is typical for those settings, what can be treated as an unethical issue in an organization versus what is ethical in our own organizational system. We come to the issue of corporate social responsibility now, and this would be this is the topic that is related to your assignment for this week. And there are lots of definitions about corporate social responsibility, but the easiest way to describe it is that the company is responsible to the society and to the stakeholders, to the context, to the environment in which it operates and it belongs. At the beginning, I mentioned that it's very important that we scan what happens regularly scan what happens in the environment, because it puts the organization in a position to regularly develop and be maintain a vital condition to guarantee the reputation of the organization and reputation building processes in the future. Of course, it requires accountability by the process of corporate social responsibility requires, first of all, accountability by leaders, by individuals, by organization, because after all, it is not just the leaders who are responsible to take part in these processes, but also each individual belonging to the organization. We need to stimulate the voices of the staff, and we should expose them in a way to the eye of the public, and thus motivate them to feel important in the organization. And talking about this, I would also motivate you to think in the direction of finding practices and examples that prove to be efficient with individuals, that prove to involve, to be successful when individuals are motivated to take part in the corporate social responsibility activities in the society. So we have the pyramid of the corporate social responsibility here, which includes the following: the philanthropic responsibility to be a good corporate citizen, the ethical responsibility to be ethical, legal responsibility to obey the law, and the economic responsibility to be profitable. This combination, and having into consideration the mission and vision of the organization, brings us to a level where we can decide what is most beneficial for the organization in which we operate. So in equation form, corporate social responsibility is the sum of economic responsibilities, legal responsibilities, ethical responsibilities, and philanthropic responsibilities. Please have this in mind when searching for the practices, when explaining different strategies used in the corporate social responsibility systems used by different organizations and in different contexts. Some arguments against the corporate social responsibility concept. Some claim that the corporate social responsibility restricts the free market goal of profit maximization, that business is not equipped to handle social activities to the extent that it's treated as something unusual for the organization, that it dilutes the primary aim of the business, increases the business power, or limits the ability to compete in a global marketplace. But on the next slide, we have a brief description of the responsibilities of the businesses in the 21st century. That it's very important to demonstrate a commitment to society's values and contribute to the social, environmental, and economic goals through actions taken by the organization. That we protect the society, we help the society to avoid the negative impacts of company operations, products, and services. Share benefits of company activities with key stakeholders as well as with shareholders. That's why this is related with accountability and transparency of the company. This process always involves transparency of the company. Sometimes we would even put ourselves in a situation when we have to admit some crises, some problems that happened in the organization in order to prove to the stakeholders that we try to be as objective as possible and accountable in each segment of our work. Thus, we will increase the trust level with these audiences. Do you agree that it's very important for the organization to be in such kind of a relationship with the stakeholders, that we admit the problems and the mistakes that can happen in our work, that we admit the reasons for crisis in the organization? Is this beneficial for the organization, or you think that it's much more important to think in the direction of avoiding damage to our reputation by focusing on some more positive practices on the accomplishments of the organization? Or it should be a balance, a combination of the two. Yes, it makes the organization, it makes it more human. And we kind of prove to that we have this kind of interpersonal connection with our stakeholders. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be expose these issues and these problems to all of our stakeholders. It's an issue of a careful assessment and evaluation. Who needs to hear what? Who should be communicated with particular messages? Who is mostly in danger or has some negative impacts as a result of the work of the company or the organization? That's why it's very important to assess who should be approached to build trust and support, as Elizabeth assessed. I will try to share an example about McDonald's. I find it interesting about McDonald's. I hope I won't have problems with the internet. Just a second to present this example. Well, it doesn't work currently, but since we are running out of time, you can, yes, you have the link here, and you have the link, and you can check it yourself, and it's kind of inspiring for you when searching for the practices for corporate social responsibility. I try to compile a list of common misconduct in organization, but feel free to upgrade the list with your own opinion or some things you consider important to be shared. So common misconduct in organizations, which is related to the issue of ethics and ethical decision making. Employees lying to supervisors. Management lying to employees, customers, vendors, or the public. Misuse of organizational assets. Lying on reports, falsifying records, especially when our bosses or other colleagues cannot check the information which is put in the reports. Sexual harassment, stealing and theft, accepting or giving bribes or kickbacks, withholding information which are important to be shared with different stakeholders. Common causes of unethical behavior: pressure, fear, greed, convenience. Do you have anything to add to this list? What makes employees kind of use this do these unethical things in the organization? Is it only pressure? Is it only fear? Is it greed? Personal beliefs that something is, yes, personal beliefs that something is right or something is wrong. Our set of cultural values. Maybe our apathy that we do not want to stay in the organization until we find something better for us. We are no longer connected to the organization. Yes, right or wrong is subjective, that's right. And it's always related to this topic that we discussed today, ethical judgment, or bringing some ethical issue in the organization. These processes, these thinking processes related to the ethics are not so easy processes. That's why it's very important that we have this system in practice and involvement of everyone inside the organization. It depends on the system, of course. Ambition can be harmful, yeah. Sometimes people do it for at the expense of others, the career of other colleagues. As mentioned before, information are hidden, not regularly shared. There is a culture where we think that some information should be withheld, should be just for us, not shared with the colleagues, just because they help us to be promoted or to be perceived as more important or more ambitious in the organization. Philip says that the judgment of any system or a priori relation of phenomena exists in any rational or metaphysical or at least epistemological contradiction to an abstracted empirical concept such as being or to be or to occur in the thing itself or the thing or of the thing itself. Philip, can you please try just explain this idea in just a couple of words for the colleagues? Illustrate it if you have some examples. Following boss's directives. Meeting overly aggressive business and financial objectives. Helping the organization survive. Meeting schedule pressures. other causes of unethical behavior in the organization. When we are not a team player, so it affects the way we do our work. In a way, we discussed most of these causes for the unethical behavior. In general, ethical dilemmas refer to making decisions under stress or dealing with complex issues that have no clear indication of what is right or what is wrong. There are no simple ethical dilemmas, as we said. All have layers of meaning and effect, and all depend on the context in which we work. I have some questions for the end that are related to the ethics of the organization. The first question is the following. Which do you think would be more effective for shaping long-term ethical behavior in an organization? A written code of ethics combined with ethics training or strong ethical leadership? Can you just be brief in your answers? Maybe Philip is trying to answer to write something about his previous statement, but what about this first question? What do you think is more important? Ethical leadership, instead of having some formal documents that regulate our work? Yes, related to ethics. So we put yes, sure. Leadership means, if done in the right way, yes, it means ethical. Yes, of course. So you think that all the other stuff are management. Leadership means ethical. Yes, of course. If done in the proper and the right way, it's of course ethical itself. What about the second question? Is it socially responsible for organizations to undertake political activity or join with others in a trade association to influence the government? Just a brief discussion to wrap up the lecturing for today with this question, and to just motivate you when working on the assignment. Elisabetta, your answer is that it's not socially responsible for organizations to undertake political activity or join with others to influence the government. But what about the second part of the question? Joining others in associations to influence the government, particularly if it affects our business. Is it important to be done in certain stages of the organization's work? If it's academia or NGOs, yes. If it's religious community, not in a secular state, yes, they should. Yes, they should join. So for the first part of the organizations, that they shouldn't. Your answers are that they shouldn't be involved in processes that are related to political activities, but be much more focused on building some networks and coalitions that help them change something, that help them change the laws and regulations if needed, that help them change the climate in which they operate. Maybe they feel stronger if they join these unions or coalitions to make some changes in their environment, like pressure groups or lobby groups. Yes. Yes. Yes, like lobby groups. Lobbying is closely related to this. Okay, colleagues, I think we came to the end of today's lecturing. I'm so sorry that we had the technical problems, but somehow we made it together. And even though I cannot hear you, I still am very grateful for your involvement in today's lecturing, because this is my preferred style of work. I usually, when I do the lecturing, I try to involve participants as much as possible. And yes, a question: can we have your presentation uploaded separately? Yes, of course, of course. I will share the presentation with you. No problem. No problem. Well, today's presentation, it's not easy to talk about all these issues in the time frame that we had available, but still we touch upon some issues that are closely related to the ethical decision making and what's important to be taken into consideration. You have many materials available, which are suggested readings for this week. You have some links, but feel free, as I suggested to other colleagues, to search for your own examples, practices that would be shared with. Can you? I can't even see. Can you, Philip? You mean you cannot see the PowerPoint presentation here today? I will. Yes. Okay, I will upload it. I will upload it later on in a short time, so you will have it. Yes, you will have it available. No problem. You're welcome. So at the end, thank you very much for your attention, for your patience today with the interruptions that we had, but it made a more dynamic day. But if you have for the end some questions, please feel free in the last couple of minutes to ask me about the assignment. If not, please use my email and I'll help you with the assignment. Thank you all, and we'll stay in touch. Bye.